Hey guys, so today I actually wanted to make a video on the process of actually choosing law schools and things that I think you should consider when it actually comes time to narrowing down your options and choosing which school you want to pursue your JD in. So I know for some people this comes relatively easily, but these are some things that I think you should consider when you're actually doing a comparative analysis between the different schools and looking into the pros and cons of attending a certain school. So first of all, when you're actually applying to schools, I think this is also an important time to consider which schools you actually want to apply to. And one of the first things I think you should consider specifically in Canada is whether you want to pursue a civil law or a common law degree. So you can either complete a civil law program or a common law program. Most law schools in Canada do follow a common law program, but there are some schools in Canada that do have a civil law program. Some schools also offer joint civil and common law programs if that's something you're interested in. I know McGill Law School does have a civil law program, but then there are schools that have joint civil and common law programs. For example, Osgoode Hall Law School has a joint civil and common law program. So that's, I think, the first thing you should look into when you're actually going into choosing which schools you're even going to apply to. So the first thing I'm going to say is costs and debt. So this is one of the biggest factors that I think you should consider, and that's actually looking into exactly how much the average annual tuition is for the schools that you're planning on attending or the schools that you're looking into attending. Along with this, I think you should also look into the different financial services that all the schools offer. So again, this could be in the form of scholarships, bursaries, contingent loan programs, or certain lines of credit they offer, or certain schools do have special agreement with certain banks where they offer a line of credit with a lower interest rate for students who are attending their law school. So these are all things I think you should consider when you're actually looking into choosing which school you want to go to. A lot of schools do also offer exit graduation funding, so for students who are graduating with higher amounts of debt and they are pursuing a career in a field of law, which is not commonly considered a higher paid field of law. So I think cost and debt plays a huge role in deciding which school is actually feasible for you to attend, and also is a good choice when it comes to choosing the law school that you're going to be spending 3 years of tuition on. So the second thing I think you should consider is scholarships. So this kind of goes off of the costs and debt, but scholarships play a huge role in potentially paying off some of that tuition and kind of alleviating some of the debt that you might be under. So most, if not all, law schools do offer entrance scholarships, and they're both based on academic merit as well as financial need. So for some schools you'll be considered automatically, but for other schools there will be an application process to go through, or potentially some interviews that you might need to go through when they're actually determining both your financial need as well as your academic merit. However, the range of funding you receive does heavily rely upon financial need, and this can be determined through either your personal statement, or there might be an additional application to apply for certain bursaries, as well as looking into your parents' income, your own income, and all of these other factors that go into how they're going to actually consider your financial need. So if possible, I would say look into different schools and look into the bursary amounts that they do offer to their incoming students, or whether you're a second year or third year student. And I think that's a great thing to factor into your decision, because again, you don't want to be under huge amounts of debt when you do actually graduate from law school. The next thing I would say to consider is school rankings, but I do want to preface this by saying that school rankings aren't the end all be all, and this does kind of go into all of my other points. You should consider all of these things and factor them in how they factor into your own life. Although unlike US schools, Canadian schools don't necessarily have these reliable ranking lists, but there are some lists that are out there that do provide kind of some insight of which schools are considered the leading law schools in Canada, or even Ontario if that's what you're looking into. So they do actually have different scales for when it comes to actually ranking these law schools, and they might do that based on faculty journal citations or faculty hiring positions or Supreme Court clerkship, the percentage of students who are hired by elite firms, and also the national reach of the school. So all of these are things that factor into what is considered a top or leading law school in Canada. So obviously certain metrics may matter more to you, so don't just rely on a website that tells you X school is the best school to go to or Y school is the best school to go to. Obviously these are measured on basically different merits and different scales, and obviously that differs for every single person. So usually schools that are more difficult to actually get into, for example, they have higher GPA cutoffs or higher LSAT cutoffs, they are relatively considered the schools that are the more leading schools or the more competitive schools to get into. Again, this does come off with trade-offs in terms of tuition and potential scholarships and bursaries, so all of these things you need to consider them when you're actually going into choosing your law school. So again, use your own discretion when it comes to evaluating the rank of the schools, but I do think that the rank does matter in some cases, so again, look into that and use your own discretion. The next thing I would say is to consider geography. So the very first thing when you're looking into this is whether you are planning on commuting to the school or whether you're planning on actually living on residence. So for most people, when it comes to law school, they do choose to live on residence just because there's not that many law schools and they're not usually in a close proximity where it'd be easy to commute back and forth. Obviously, some classes are super early in the morning, some or super late at night, so it does kind of get difficult when it comes time to commuting. But for some people, it is easier to commute than it is to live on residence. So again, these are things you want to consider when it actually goes into both applying for the school that you want to apply to, and also when it comes to choosing, when it comes time to choose your schools. But one thing I do want to say is whether or not you're living on residence, I would kind of look at kind of the state of the legal field in the city that you're applying in. So for example, schools which are located in a densely populated area like Toronto, they are considered places where there are more feasible career options when it comes time to graduating, or even when it comes time to certain internships, because again, these law schools do have partnerships with certain firms in Toronto. So I would say kind of look into the potential career options that are available in the city that you're applying in. Also, I would say look into the general area of the city that you're in and see whether you would even want to live there for 3 years, because again, you are going to be there for 3 years, and the last thing you want is to hate where you're living. So next thing I want to say is the actual merits of the school in terms of, for example, their clinical program, their faculty, certain programs, certain courses, or certain areas of law in which the school actually specializes in. So I think it's a good idea to compare all these factors and have that inform your decision when it actually comes time to choosing law school. Last thing I want to say is the actual appeal of the school. So this can be in terms of the visual appeal or the actual emotional feeling you get when you attend the school. So usually when you get accepted to law school, all the law schools have kind of an orientation day, and they do have campus tours offered at their law school. So this is a great opportunity, and I do think everyone who has the chance should take this opportunity to tour the different law schools and kind of get a feel of how you feel when you're actually going to that law school. So this also gives you an opportunity to meet the faculty, to meet the dean, to tour the law school, to get a sense of the community aspect, the social aspect, maybe certain extracurriculars that you might be interested in. So this may seem like kind of on the superficial side of things, but I do personally believe that you should be liking the place that you're spending 3 years in. And again, if you're planning on living on residence, make sure you tour the residence buildings, look for the on-campus housing options, the off-campus housing options, look at all your options and see whether it's feasible and whether you would actually want to live there. All of this should play into your decision because again, you're spending the next 3 years and you obviously want that to be a great experience when you actually go. Finally, I would say that this is all subjective and these are all my opinions on things to consider, and these are things that I kind of considered when it came time to me choosing law schools and actually going through the process of finding the right fit for me. Everyone has a different process for selection, but I hope this provided some helpful insight into some things that you consider both when it comes time to applying to law school and also when it comes down to choosing the law school that you want to attend. So good luck with your application process, and if you have any questions, you can let me know. I'm always open to answering any questions. So thank you for watching and good luck.